and Robbo.
Streaming across the globe, Ben Norris, Rob McKnight, and David Robinson.
Ben, Rob and Robbo. News, reviews, entertainment too. It's the Ben, Rob and Robbo. Ben, Rob and Robbo Show. Ben, Rob and Robbo Show.
Welcome to the Ben, Rob and Robbo Show. Here's Rob McKnight.
Rob, we can't hear you. It's very low. It's very low. We can't hear you.
Cannot hear you. I can hear Robbo, though. He sounds very sexy.
There we go.
Great.
Oh.
Hello and welcome to the Ben, Rob and Robbo Show on this Tipsy Thursday. Today we'll be catching up with the one and only Carlotta. The living room icon has just been awarded a member of the Order of Australia and will tell us how the big day went. We'll also be talking movies with Joe Casamento and discussing today's hot button topics. But first we're talking Victoria's COVID-19 lockdown. Ben Norris is once again reporting from the heart of Melbourne where Stage 3 restrictions came into force just over 13 hours ago. Ben, what's the general feeling there today? Has anything changed?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of changes, actually. Right now I'm on Chapel Street, which used to be the heart of hospitality and retail. And as you can see, which once looked like a New York street full of people walking down, it's completely empty. So from yesterday to today, there's a lot less foot traffic than what we were seeing. However, I can report that, traffic is pretty much exactly the same, which is making me think that not a lot of Victorians are taking this as seriously as you would expect. And the reason why I say that is because when we did the first lockdown, there was no cars on the road. So I don't know what all these people are doing out and about. I'm assuming they're not all here for business.
But Ben, this is what is usually a very busy street. So it's definitely lower than what it would have been 6 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Look, this is a bit of a change. I must say I did come down to Chapel Street when the lockdown was on last time, and it did look a lot like this. However, the last time the lockdown was on, I actually took some video footage of me driving down the street. I wasn't driving, actually, it was my partner driving, but you could see there was no cars on the road. So as I do this crossover the next hour, it'll be interesting for you at home or for the viewers at home to see just how many cars are still on the road.
So, Ben, I've got to ask you, I had a friend who went out last night. It was kind of the last freedom drinks, he said. And he said it was almost like an atmosphere like New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. Is that what you felt last night? Was everyone just having that one last big party?
Unfortunately for me, I was really tired because I do 3 jobs. So
I know.
I ended up I turned my phone off last night, which was a big mistake when you need an alarm to wake you up in the morning. But I turned it off because people calling me last night and the messages I got this morning were like, are you joking that you're in bed? This is like the night. This is the night of nights. And I have to report this, which is really quite scary, but 3 of my friends went out to 3 different restaurants and all 3 restaurants copped a massive fine as they went over capacity. So
really?
That was on a restaurant on Toorak Road. I'm not going to mention it because I'm sure they're having a really bad day because they had a very expensive day yesterday. But the police had clocked up to 40 people over capacity at that particular point, and the owners were getting a big fine. But up until that point, I was getting video shots and calls from my friends, and it was kind of like you're right, Robbo, it was like they were at a New Year's Eve party, but bigger. The vibe was huge.
Wow, that's just crazy. Look, let's bring you up to speed with the latest developments. And bizarrely, Victorian Premier Dan Andrews will not be holding a press conference today, and updated figures have not been released by the Victorian government. But here's what we do know. A Stage 3 lockdown has begun across Victoria. This means those in Melbourne and the Mitchell Shire will not be allowed visitors to their homes except for things like caregiving and compassionate reasons. Cafes, bars and restaurants will be closed for the next 6 weeks except for takeaway services. 3,000 residents in 9 Housing Commission units in Melbourne have been tested for COVID-19 and once cleared will come out of hard lockdown and adhere to Stage 3 restrictions like the rest of the state. They've been in lockdown now for 6 days. No international flights will be allowed to land in Melbourne. Queensland will reopen its border tomorrow except to Victorians. Additionally, travellers who develop COVID-19 symptoms while in Queensland must be tested or face a $4,004 fine. Meanwhile, New South Wales recorded 13 new cases overnight, 11 in hotel quarantine and 2 among residents in the border town of Albury. Here's Premier Gladys Berejiklian at this morning's press conference.
We're in the process of doing is what we call mopping up potential seeding. So we know that for some time, obviously community transmission has been high in Melbourne, and so what we are very alert to, especially given the number of people on those border communities coming back and forth, that we want to make sure that we're flushing out any potential seeding that occurred prior to that spike in cases becoming evident, to ensure that there's no trace of that level of community transmission, particularly in those border communities.
The Premier went on to say there will be no new tightening of restrictions in New South Wales at this stage. Meanwhile, at the New South Wales-Victorian border, the expected chaos doesn't seem to have eventuated. This report from ABC News.
I'm sure, as you can probably see behind me, the scenes are dramatically different to what we saw yesterday morning. We haven't seen any of those huge lines of traffic building up back across the border into Victoria. At the moment, there's only a handful of cars and they're being passed through quite quickly. We did speak to New South Wales Police, who are monitoring this checkpoint, and they said that they're putting that down to the fact that people are a bit better prepared today. They've got their permits ready, and those that haven't been able to access a permit have their licence. They say despite it being quite quiet here at the moment, the volume of traffic that has passed through this checkpoint at the moment has doubled on yesterday. And yesterday, during that peak hour period, they checked more than 3,000 cars.
Well, the South Australian government is taking a hard-line approach to anyone travelling from Victoria. Here's SA Premier Stephen Marshall a short time ago.
Today, the first of our announcements is that we will be starting a testing blitz in South Australia effective immediately. We are asking all people who have been into Victoria in recent weeks to present themselves immediately for testing for the COVID-19. Can I say that even if people do not have symptoms, we are asking them to present themselves to make sure that we can look at every single possibility. So that is our first announcement. Secondly, as of midnight last night, any South Australians that are returning will be required to undertake a test within 24 hours of crossing the border, whether that be a road border or at the airport. They are now required to undertake a COVID-19 test within 24 hours and then again on day 12.
Wow, Robbo, mandatory testing in South Australia plus a 14-day isolation period. This is very serious.
It is very serious, and I think we understand that, you know, this has got to happen at the moment. But at what point, though, when are we ever going to get rid of the virus? Probably not. Are there going to be enough vaccines? Probably not, if ever one ever arrives. So I just ask, how long do we keep up this kind of very rigorous, requirements for people to do it? I think it's good to do it at the beginning, but I just worry about the future of that. I think it's, we've spoken about mandatory testing on the show before. And is it not time to start doing that? Because at some point we've got to stop the lockdowns, because we've got to get the country back on its feet. So maybe the road to that is this mandatory testing. If you want to be if you want to get out of lockdown, you've just got to get the test. I think we're going to talk more about that later on in the show. But this is tough stance. We've got to protect everyone.
Ben, is it quite bizarre? You live in the second biggest city in Australia, and everyone is basically saying, don't come to our states. Is it very weird being from Melbourne and having the rest of Australia reacting this way?
Look, it's hard to really take that on board. I think, for a lot of us here in Victoria, I think we're just following government information. We're sitting by our phones, we're listening on the radio, and we're doing everything we can to sort of make sure we're doing the right thing. Interestingly enough, having conversations here on Chapel Street today, a lot of cafe owners are still out and about shutting up their stores. And from what communication I have been given from them is an extreme disappointment to the Daniel Andrews government. And that is due to the fact that, cafes and bars and even the protest wasn't the places in which this COVID outbreak came from. This COVID outbreak came from a mistake made by Daniel Andrews. And that seems to be the general consensus, for everyone on Chapel Street here today. That's the locals, the business owners of retail and hospitality.
It's an interesting stance considering that he put quarantine in place. Unfortunately, the people who booked security guards to handle the quarantine didn't do the job. It's interesting how the tide is turning against Daniel Andrews. Do you feel that people got too placent and they were more interested in getting out rather than doing the right thing?
I don't think it has anything to do with that at all. I think a mistake was made, by the Daniel Andrews government. I voted for Daniel Andrews, and I will vote for him again. People make mistakes, and great leaders of our time have made mistakes. And with Daniel Andrews, the problem was that the right people were not brought into place in Victoria to make sure that we were doing the same thing as the rest of the country. So decisions by different governments in different states were definitely better. And the reason why we're in this situation is because of a few small mistakes. I don't know enough about government. Maybe I'm not the right person, and maybe we can get...
No, you are the right person. You're there on the ground, mate, and doing a fabulous job for us today. But it is interesting how all your friends last night were going out to cafes and bars, and you were reporting a little earlier that some restaurants were fined for overcapacity. People think as you said, it was like New Year's Eve all over again. People were going, it's our last night of freedom, it's our last night of freedom. Whereas people are still infected right now. People that don't even know they're infected right now.
Look, I think it's a lot to do with it had a lot to do with the younger people that I know more than the older people. And I don't want to come across as ageist, but certainly the younger people do feel like they're exempt from some of these rules. I must admit, even today, I've had more people suggesting that, am I free on the weekend to catch up? And I've been writing back saying, am I free on the weekend? Are you mad? Above that, I'm just going to drink myself a bottle of white wine and, go to sleep for the whole weekend. But there's no way. And I was reminding people, I don't want to read out a message, but I probably should. But I was reminding people, I'm like, look, I'd love to come round to your place tomorrow, but I can't. It's against the law.
It's a very good point. And look, with the cloud of COVID still hanging over Australia, is it time we embrace the mask? It's been proven to be an effective tool in protecting people against the virus, but as we've seen both here and overseas, many people are reluctant or unwilling to take the safety precaution. What do you think, Robbo? Should we be forced to wear the mask?
You know what? I wouldn't mind seeing this. So we've had the hand sanitizer, right? So that's, if you go into a shopping centre, you see it everywhere. Should it be kind of mandatory mandatory to have a mask on? If it gets worse, then yeah, I think we all need to do our part to beat the virus, to protect others, protect ourselves. It's the right thing to do for the greater good. You know what? If I had to wear a mask, and I promise you I'm not just saying this, for me to go to Woolworths and I had to wear a mask, so be it. Because if I breathe on someone and I've got COVID, and I breathe on an elderly person, or I breathe on someone who's got a respiratory disease, the cost of me putting on a mask is nothing. The cost to them is everything.
Interesting, Robbo, that you say that. But I think there's guidelines that need to be put in place by the different states as to where exactly people are required, and they should become laws. I think that supermarkets, absolutely, that's a place where anyone that goes into a supermarket, which is a communal area, which is the code, it's the key word at the moment. Let's make sure that we're doing the best that we can in communal areas. I think that the masks should be mandatory, but it should be a law. We can't just have maybe, whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's where we're finding, real conflict with people coming up to others and saying, are you wearing a mask? I was just setting up before, and a woman who was walking her dog said, what are you doing? And I explained to her what I was doing, and she said, well, you should be wearing a mask aggressively. And I'm like, well, who's to say? Who's to say whether or not I should be wearing a mask? Is this the environment that I should be doing it, or is it just supermarkets, or is it public transport? I think it's a matter of just being able to classify the exact areas and making it a thing.
And be clear about it. I think, Ben, I totally agree with you. Be clear about where we need to do it. So if we're gonna say to people wear masks, then I agree with you. If it's a case of you're going to a room with more than 10 people, which would be a supermarket, a department store, whatever, a bus, then yeah, you've got to wear the mask. I think you're exactly right. What worries me though is over this entire pandemic, the messages that come out of government are all being different. It's he said, she said, he said, she said.
Exactly.
Different here, different there, and that's what the problem is. So I really agree with you on that one. Yeah.
It's interesting,
It's clear
though.
leadership. That's what we're missing, though. That's the point. It's clear leadership that we need right now. And that leadership is where we're getting direct information on when and where we can do this. Because let me tell you, I'm a really lovely person, but I could have easily had a fight with that woman and told her to push on. But, I said, thank you very much. And, all the very best and gave her the signal to push on. But look, the thing is, though, there is no clear guidelines. So who am I to tell her to push on? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. Even during this pandemic, I've done the social distancing, I've isolated, but I haven't really considered wearing a mask. And it's always been a thing that you've sort of seen other cultures wearing, and it really hasn't been an Australian way of life.
I don't understand how that's relevant. I don't know why you're talking about it from a cultural point of view. That seems...
Just let me finish and I'll get to my point, mate. My point being that it's always been other cultures that have worn the mask. And I think in this country we've sort of looked at that like it's a bit over the top and OTT. Whereas I now think with this second wave coming, I agree with you that if we're told to wear a mask, we will. And even if we're not told to, I am thinking that if I go out, maybe I will have to wear a mask. And even though I feel like people will look at me funny, like, oh, he's over the top, we have this massive second wave coming, and we've seen that it can easily get out of control with what's happening in Victoria. I'm not putting down any cultures or ethnicity, Ben, when I say this. I'm pointing out the difference in the way we view the use of masks.
I think it's more than my disgust in general, like the fact that, people are saying, oh, culturally, like, the Asian community, that they've worn masks and it creates fear. Look, at the end of the day, I never understood that. If people want to come and live in Australia from any kind of culture, I come from Melbourne, which is a multicultural society quite heavily. And if people want to come and live here for however long, and that's how they want to live their life, I don't see why we have to judge them for it. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not saying that I was judging. I feel like you're putting a racist blemish on me, which is not where I was coming from at all. I was talking about the point of view that Australians are more relaxed when it comes to these kind of things, whereas perhaps Asian people who've lived in a more confined space where there are more people living clustered together understand the risks more than we do.
Well, I think I'm glad that you clarified that. That makes me feel a little bit better.
Well, given it half a chance, I'm always happy to clarify. Look, people have said that those who don't get tested are selfish, but there are many reasons why some people say they don't want the test. They can range from fear or losing work to the trauma of having an invasive procedure. Robbo, should people be forced to take the test?
It's a very difficult and interesting question, I think. If you start having people that being heavy-handed, that then creates an animosity, I think, between the public and the government, the public and the health officials. I think that would have to be a very, very last resort. However, like you've said, that people have gone out to restaurants and they've had this kind of last hurrah, but there's still infections. It's not like, the coronavirus said, all right, guys, I'm going to take a break, but I'll let you have a little party, and then I'll get right back onto it from midnight tonight. That didn't happen. So I just think it needs to be a last resort, but people need to do the right thing. You need to social distance. You need to possibly wear a mask if you're amongst, vulnerable people. I think that's a very important step to take. I don't want to see forced testing yet, but if it gets worse, if more people die, if more people are infected, if more states are shut down like Victoria, then yeah, I think that's probably a very helpful tool.
What do you think, Ben? We're seeing South Australia had just announced today that they will be introducing mandatory testing, and in Queensland, if you have any signs and don't get a test, you will be fined $4,004. Do you think this is the way we have to go to contain this thing?
Absolutely. I think everyone should be getting themselves tested. It makes no sense to me that people are struggling with that. I feel like the only people that are really struggling it in the circles that I swim in, are the people that don't like being told what to do. And to be honest with you, it's making me think of people less. It makes me think less of them. At the end of the day, mandatory testing should come in. We should find out the fastest and the best ways to be able to quarantine this. But the message that I have for all Australians right now is we need to fix our attitudes. We need to realize this is a much bigger thing than I think a lot of people are understanding. And attitude is key. Sometimes we feel uncomfortable to do things, but sometimes things are very important.
Okay, let's move on. And two Californians who painted over a Black Lives Matter mural have been charged with a hate crime. The pair were filmed painting over the iconic words while they're also yelling that BLM was racist and all lives matter. They're also being charged with vandalism offences. If convicted, they face up to a year in prison. What do you think, Ben? Is it a little heavy-handed?
Look, I think this is a case of people being a little bit uneducated. When I first, and people are going to come for me on this, when I first heard about it, I was like, yes, all lives matter. Yes, all lives matter. That's what it should be. But then with further education on why this message is so important and why it is Black Lives Matter, you go, oh, I get it now. And so for me, when I see people really struggling with Black Lives Matter and they want it to be all lives matter, they're just missing some very simple information, don't you think?
Oh, I completely agree. The other thing about this is that you don't have the right to overrule a council decision. So chuck the book at them. You can't. If the council put up a mural, you can't look at it and say, oh, darling, don't love that mural, and paint over it. This was a ratified piece of art or message on the roadworks, and you don't have the right to overrule the government and the law. So whatever your political views are, there are other ways. Put in a protest, go to your councillor and say you don't want it. Even putting the Black Lives Matter to the side at the moment, you don't have the right to go and destroy something that has been approved. If they go to jail for a year, so be it. You don't have the right. We can't pick and choose the laws that we abide by. Robbo?
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah. Sorry.
No, Rob, I totally agree. I think you're exactly right. If you want to protest, go to your councillor. I thought that was an absolutely brilliant point. If you don't like the message, you can't then take the law into your hands. But this also is very grubby, isn't it? Like, the fact that they went so far and they were so angry about it to actually do this and think they'll get away with it is really grubby, and it really just exposes more of that, endemic racism that we see in America. We see all over the world, really. I'm not going to say America, but especially now at the moment because of the protests and things like that. They were prepared. They had lots of paint. They were angry. This is not the way to do it. It's not their right. Newsflash for those two, you're not the only two people living in that city or living in that country or living on this planet. So I can't wait. I agree with you, Rob. Throw the book at them. See you later. Do it a different way. Do it a smarter way next time.
All right, moving on. And former home and away star Tammin Sursok has shared a photo on Instagram that has left people very, very divided. To her 1.3 million followers, she posted this photo with her kids, along with the caption, "Thank you, Montana, for the most incredible stay. You stole our hearts and, by the looks of it, our clothes. Hashtag young, wild and free." Some praised the actress for teaching her children aged 5 and 1 to be body positive, while others said it was a little strange. It was an Instagram story. She went on to defend the photo, saying that Western culture is filled with taboo about bodies and that people who were offended should sit with themselves and ask why the backs of 3 people goes to something sinister in their minds. She finished by saying, maybe if more pictures of this were posted, that they were bathed in love and purity, we would love in a much better world. Robbo, what do you think? Is the issue here that she was naked around her kids?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? You've got to go through everyone who's got a soapbox on Twitter and go, well, what are you actually annoyed at? So some people are annoyed, obviously, that she was naked and full stop, that she was naked in front of her kids, that the kids were naked in front of her, that they were all photographed in this way. It's just a weird example. I kind of like what she did. She self-censored those photos. I get what her message is, and it's almost, I kind of agree with her. If your mind immediately goes to strange or weird or something up, then the problem's with you, not with them. However, would I ever post a photo like that if I ever had kids? I really wouldn't. I just think that the world is full of grubby people, and I just think, no, I get the message she's trying to do, but it would make me feel uncomfortable. Rob, you've got 3 girls. Would you do this kind of picture?
No, but I don't go around naked in front of my kids, but it wouldn't bother me. The other issue that always comes up with this stuff, Ben, is kissing your kids on the lips, like it's an invasion for them. They're not getting a choice. I think every time a celebrity posts a picture with their kids, people go off about it. Do you understand why?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can understand why some people have issues with it, and that comes down to the fact that some people were raised with nude families and some people weren't. And I'm going to tell you, I was raised by a mum and a dad who didn't mind being nude. They were nude more than they really should have been, to be honest with you. But the only side effect that ever had with me was that I'm now a nude person myself, and my partner hates it. He's like, the neighbours can see into our place. Put some pants on, and I'm like, oh, if they're looking, they can have a look. I don't care. But look, at the end of the day, I think parents should do what they feel comfortable with their children, and absolutely, we know the appropriate ages of when it becomes a little bit more inappropriate. But small children like that, you know, in a loving environment and as a cute moment, I think it was amazing. I actually think it's great that she managed to post that, and I guarantee you those kids are probably going to grow up more normal than the ones, you know, the naysayers.
Well, I think you might be right. And look, let me tell you about the kissing thing. I got 3 kids. 2 love a kiss, 1 doesn't. And we pay attention to them. We listen to them. Could you imagine if a kid tried to kiss you and you, like your own kid, if one of your kids came to kiss you and you said, oh no, that's not appropriate, they're going to feel rejected. And it's just, what a crazy world we're living in where love and kindness is not accepted because it's all sinister. I just can't bear it. But look, there are a few moments sweeter than receiving a hand-drawn picture from a child, but their talents are sometimes, shall we say, questionable. One British mum had her son's drawing immortalised into a keyring, calling it Mummy with her lady bits. This prompted hundreds of comments from other parents sharing their hilarious portraits. There was this mum with her defining features. This mum came complete with razor-sharp teeth and claws for hands. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
This rather rude animal sending a strong message.
Oh, my God. The next one. Sorry, I just thought the next
Even
one.
Mickey Mouse was a victim in this chalk drawing, complete with tail. You think it's a tail anyway. And what could be mistaken for a well-endowed jellyfish? It was apparently a tortoise. I've got to say, we ourselves have been caught out. My daughter, my youngest daughter, was doing some kinetic sand. She was doing some sculptures, and this is what she came up with. Now, I would just like to remind you, I just pointed out I do not go naked around my kids, so this is not.
I don't know.
This is not a portrait of Daddy.
But what did she mean to create here? What was she going for there?
What was she creating?
It was a kinetic sandcastle.
It was a sandcastle, apparently. It's kinetic sandcastle, so presumably that's the tar.
Rob, I just have to say, this is definitely one of the most surreal moments of my life, is standing on Chapel Street, looking at children's drawings of very inappropriate things. The people walking past, and thank God there's not a lot of them, are giving me the weirdest looks. And I'm like, oh, I'm looking at kids' drawings that are not appropriate. And they're like, why?
Well, look, if you have any funny drawings to share with us, please send them through to us at facebook.com/BRR Show or on Twitter at BRR Show. Look, at the moment, we have some breaking news. Scott Morrison is giving a press conference about Hong Kong. We're going to bring you an update on that. He's speaking about Australia's relationship with Hong Kong. We'll get his grabs worked up in just a moment. In the meantime, we will cross to the Ticker newsroom and get the very latest news headlines.
Rob, thank you. Let's check some of the top stories today from Ticker. Victoria first, but now New South Wales could head back into lockdown as numbers continue rising there. New South Wales Health has spoken out about a mistake at Sydney Airport that saw dozens of Victorians exit a Jetstar flight without being screened. New South Wales Health says they were busy screening passengers from another flight, but have put new procedures into place. And for Victorians heading to Queensland, not going to happen. The Queensland Sunshine State saying no Victorians will be allowed into the state regardless of whether or not they go into 14 days of self-quarantine. A lack of contact tracers and an inability to train them at scale is being blamed for the second wave we're facing here in Victoria for COVID-19. The staff shortage has left the state more vulnerable than if transmissions had occurred in New South Wales, experts say. The Morrison government is preparing to extend the $70 billion JobKeeper program, providing further relief on insolvent trading and bringing forward tax cuts and credits as well. The move aims to dampen concerns the Melbourne coronavirus outbreak could now derail the national economic recovery. Tesla's blistering stock rally is putting CEO Elon Musk in reach of a payday potentially worth $1.8 billion, fueled by stronger than expected car deliveries, particularly for June. Shares of Tesla have now surged over 40% the past 7 sessions. Nvidia has overtaken Intel the first time as the most valuable US chip maker. In a semiconductor industry milestone, Nvidia's shares rose 2.3% in afternoon trade Wednesday to a record of $404. The weather map now for the country: Melbourne, sunshine and 16 degrees, sunny in Sydney and 18 degrees as well. Brisbane, overcast and 19 degrees, some sun for Perth and 17, and Adelaide, bit of cloud around but otherwise fine and 16 degrees. Take a look at the markets now. Starting off with the ASX, the local market was up, it's dipped but it's up again, still hovering around the 6,000 level, just under it at the moment. Over to Wall Street, this is how it looked: somewhat of a seesaw, up then down then back up again, as many investors essentially ignoring what they're seeing from news of the day. Investors looking for positivity and trying not to look at too much of the data. On the up is the market overseas. That's the latest from Ticker. I'm Aaron Young. Now back to the Ben, Rob and Robbo show.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that. And just for a little bit more news, as we said, Scott Morrison is currently in a press conference live from Canberra, speaking about Australia's relationship with Hong Kong. Here's some of what he had to say.
Other governments around the world have been very consistent in expressing our concerns about the imposition of the national security law on Hong Kong. And today we have agreed to announce that that national security law constitutes a fundamental change of circumstances in respect to our extradition agreement with Hong Kong. And so Australia today has taken steps to suspend our extradition agreement. We have formally notified Hong Kong and advised the Chinese authorities. I also note that our travel advice for Hong Kong has been updated and would encourage Australians to refer to that travel advice.
Very interesting developments. There's a lot going on in Hong Kong at the moment, Ben and Robbo. I'm just reading that the government is going to provide incentives for Hong Kong businesses to relocate to Australia. So this could actually end up being a boom. We know that the British government handed back Hong Kong 23 years ago. The Chinese government promised that Hong Kong would remain independent for 50 years. We're only about 23 years into that, and that has not remained. People are scared, aren't they, Robbo?
They certainly are, Rob, and this is a very big thing. Canada was the first country to, suspend the extradition treaty with Hong Kong. They're also stopping any kind of military or sensitive military information that is going into Hong Kong. They're now treating it that as if it's going to mainland China. And now I'm just doing some quick research here. Hong Kong does have extradition treaties with 55 countries. A lot of them are now really reconsidering what they're going to do. I think that's an important message. At the same time, we've got to acknowledge this is quite powerful for Australia, considering our current relationship with China. The fact that we're doing this now is a pretty big, bold move from us, but a very important move. I've been to Hong Kong, lucky enough to be in Hong Kong a couple of times. It's a wonderful place to visit, and I can understand why people are so very uncomfortable with those new laws that China have said. Sorry, I said before, it's 52 countries who do have extradition treaties with Hong Kong. Canada was the first. There are now question marks on all of those countries, and I'm, fairly proud about Australia, the fact that we've taken a stand here and said, well, we're going to suspend that too.
Yeah, and look, they are changing the visas, and most of those visa changes will affect people already in Australia. Ben, what we've already seen from the US is big tech companies like Google and Facebook refusing to share any data or information with Hong Kong officials because it is feeding back to China. So any data about users and who's doing what, they've stopped that. So people are worried about the impact China is having on Hong Kong.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've seen that with what's been evolving with TikTok. Scott Morrison's believed to be investigating as to whether or not TikTok's going to be banned here in Australia after India banned it in their country, and a lot of people becoming very sensitive about the information in which China can access readily. I think that's been really fascinating to see that evolve. But I think at the moment, a lot of things from around the world are evolving. And I think, this is probably just the start of some of these communications needing to change, maybe temporarily.
Yeah, the TikTok thing is very interesting because there have been reports that TikTok is Chinese government owned, and that information from your phone is going back to Chinese authorities. That is unproven at this moment. That's why I haven't put it on our show as yet. But there are real concerns about it, and this story is a developing story. So another one. As soon as there's something concrete, we'll obviously talk about that. But my kids have TikTok on the phone, so it's a very scary thing to consider. Look, Ben,
are you worried?
I'm a little worried. Yeah, for sure.
Are you worried? I don't know. I'm not worried. I don't know why. I'm not worried about it. I mean, Robbo, what do you think?
Sorry, Ben. This is one, there's about a little over 50 apps that actually, when you download them and you accept their terms and conditions, they can copy text out of your Notes app. So if you get a Notes app and you make notes, it does allow the app to take that information out of that. That we know. That's very important. The other thing is there was also worries about remember that face app that could aid you or do all kind of things. That was actually a Russian app, which was proven as well. And people were worried because essentially they were giving up a lot of personal information, essentially their faces, and that's where that app is now kind of gone by the wayside. But TikTok is certainly growing exponentially in very different countries, including here in Australia. But you've got to remember, this is a moment where you go, well, this is an app from another country. That's fine. But what powers do the apps have when you download them? And that's really important.
There's a whole segment in this, in the information we're giving away when we subscribe to anything.
Sorry,
and we
Rob.
could go on about that for a long time. Ben, thank you for your reporting from Chapel Street this afternoon. We are going to come back to you before the show ends for an update on what's going on up there, and you will bring us a bit more of what the Prime Minister has said about the COVID-19 crisis and how Victoria's been affected. It's interesting, the PM is giving a press conference, but Dan Andrews today is nowhere to be seen. And we also know that the test results from those 9 housing towers will come through overnight, so we could very well see a dramatic spike in cases, but as yet there is no updated information on the Victorian government website into how many cases we've had in the last 24 hours. This is quite bizarre as we lock down our borders. Ben, thank you. We'll see you a little bit later.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. It's a real treat for us now as we welcome one of our good friends to the show. On Australia Day, Carlotta was awarded a Member of the Order of Australia, and just this week, the glamorous one attended a ceremony where she was officially recognised. Carlotta, welcome to the Ben, Rob and Robbo show.
Yes.
Hi, boys.
Oh, it's so good to finally have you here. I mean,
Long time.
Yeah.
I thought you lived in the Simpson Desert. It took so long to get here.
Well, I've been
He's in
wanting
the
Carlotta
burbs.
to come on this show for a long time, and she could only do it if she came to the house. So she's just outside the studio/garage. Carlotta, what an amazing time for you to receive your AM.
Oh, finally.
It's amazing. And so on Tuesday, you actually had the presentation where you received it. How amazing was that moment for you?
I think it was the brightest they've ever had at Government House because the lovely little people who are in charge there, I think they're on the other side of the fence, and they were the Queen's here.
I'm not even sure what that means, but it's the Member of the Order of Australia, and you had a fabulous time, as these photos show. It really,
Yes.
It's been a long time coming, as we said, but, you've always struggled
No,
with
but it
acceptance.
wasn't just for me. Sorry to interrupt you, Rob. It wasn't just for me. It was for, I accepted the part on my entertainment side because, I've been entertaining since the pyramids. But the other side of it was for my helping the gays over the years get more accepted. But as I did put up on Facebook this morning, I dedicated to all my mates out there that have fought behind the scenes but are not out in the limelight like me, and they deserve I said, this is for you as well.
That's
and
very lovely.
I'm not being schmaltzy about that. It's true because
No, I understand
I've
that.
got mates that are still committing suicide, darling, and it's hideous.
I know. And look, and the work that you've done is amazing, and the work everyone has done is amazing. But it is our Tipsy Thursday, and I just want to raise my glass to you because you deserve this. And you really, you're bloody amazing, Carlotta. So cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers to you, Carol. Thank you.
Now,
I love your little drunk sessions. I love your drink, but I'm going to have a go at you, Robbo and Ben. Would you please start smiling? You're looking too miserable all the time. You've got beautiful teeth, Robbo. You don't get some smiling in it.
I'm sorry.
Every day I turn on, you're sort of like this.
It is true, Carlotta. I do apologise.
You were like when I was doing that shows on Channel 10 where I used to get into my earpiece. Carol, lift your chins or your 7 chins.
Someone very
Who
smart
said
must
that?
have been telling you that.
Did Rob say that? That's terrible. You're a national icon.
The other one.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, shit. There we go. Yeah.
I'm not used to this new medium.
But Carlotta, to get serious for a moment, it's funny how you wrote off me saying congratulations earlier. When you spoke on the McKnight Tonight podcast, you did talk about the fact you still don't feel accepted. You know, you've got one of our highest honours. Do you feel accepted now?
Look, Rob, there's always going to be that out there that not totally accepted. It's always going to happen. Unfortunately, I'm probably too a sensitive person. I pick up on things. I pick up on. I can pick a fake person in 5 seconds, and I guess that's probably my fault. I'm not. Because of what's happened to me over the years, I think I don't have that trust. I can't get rid of that. It's a fault with me, and I don't like it. But anyway, look, I live with it, and that's it.
So, Carlotta, talking about that, you have been such a trailblazer. We recognise that. Finally, the government, the Queen, the big Queen, has recognised that. But when you go at home, so we see all your glitz and glamour. We love you for that. But when you go at home at night, do you have the feeling of? Do you feel pressure on you because you are such a trailblazer in the community? Is it hard to do that?
Yeah, it is. Look, Rob, what it is, show business is a very lonely business. You go on a high, like when I've recently been doing all the Spiegel tent tours for the festivals around Australia with my one-woman show, and, you get on such a high, and that 2 hours out on stage, you're just so, in another world. But then all of a sudden, when you come off stage, all that glamour and everything just goes down like a big shutter.
And you've actually
very lonely. You listen to everyone going, "Oh, I love you," and blah, 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 blah. And then you go home and close that door, and then that sparkle's gone. Any entertainer knows that.
Yeah, Carlotta, I totally agree with you, and I totally understand where you're coming from. But aside from that kind of showbiz, people do look up to you. You are an icon. People look to you for inspiration. Do you feel that kind of energy? Do you feel that kind of that weight to be guiding, our community throughout the darkness?
Look, years ago, I suppose I was one of the only ones that you could go to because we were in the shows, and other friends of mine who are in show business could do it. Today, there is so much help out there, Rob, and it's just that, look, I appreciate people saying that about me, but there are people behind the scenes, as I said before, that, who are doing all this hard slogging of helping kids still come out of the closet. And I can only do what I can do. And I get letters and I get people ringing me. I've got, I went through all that scene on the TV a few years ago where I had a go at about doctors treating young kids too early who wanted to go and be women. I said, wait till they become teenagers and their bodies have matured and they can make up their own minds. And I got I got so much hate thrown at me because the whole thing has changed. But it's changed because I grew up in a different era. And the era today is, it's transsexual, whatever words they've got today, I'm just Carlotta. I don't put a brand on myself. I don't care what people think of me. A bloke, a girl, a woman, whatever. I'm just Carlotta. I'm a human being. And I think that's how we all should be treated. Our sexuality should come into it.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Carlotta. I want to ask you, though, our community receives a lot of hate and has received a lot of hate over years and years and years, but now it's very, very different. Now it's more targeted with social media. What was, obviously you received a lot of, hate before. Is it different now in this new world, or is it the same kind of stuff?
No, it's different. It's different because I was receiving hate from other transsexuals who were having because of things what I was saying. And I'm the first person to stick up with anyone from the gay community. Yeah. I will do it till the day I drop. But it blew me away because I thought, what have I said wrong? And apparently it was over something about, I said, I was running around with me, something about me in a toilet or something. But it has changed. And I suppose, if you want to call me an old fuddy-duddy or whatever, but I'm not going to change my
I don't think
views.
anyone could call you an old fuddy-duddy. And the crazy thing about this is that you were the trailblazer. That was the word Robbo used. And people in this country who change genders and, get to be their true selves can thank you for being that trailblazer. So the idea that they would come after you, they don't have to agree with everything you say, and that's a fair society. But how dare they come after you like this? Look, I want to talk about the fact you've had a sold-out one-woman show, and it's been going great. You've now pulled the pin on your upcoming Sydney performances because of COVID-19, so that's having a huge effect on everything. But what I love, Carlotta, is that you're releasing these paintings that you've been doing, and people are buying your paintings, and this is going great.
It's amazing because, I always painted, when I was starting off in the businesses, I was a gay little boy working at David Jones and Mark Foy's, painting the sceneries in the windows and that. And that's where because I always drew. And I thought, what am I going to do sitting at home? Because here I am isolating since the 8th of March. So I pulled out all the paints and everything and started painting away. But I don't think it was a mistake. I started putting them up on Facebook, and next minute I've got galleries ringing me because everyone loved my cartoon ones.
Amazing.
Because I was doing things like we had a fabulous club everyone used to go to, the Taxi Club, and I was doing drunk drag queens and funny faces and all that in the paintings, and they are hysterical. And everyone's writing into Facebook saying, "Oh, I know that. That's that person. Do you remember she was all pissed?" And all of a sudden, a gallery picked it up at Paddington, and then I'm doing an exhibition in February before Mardi Gras of all the paintings. I've sold 5 already, which is good. I thought, Mummy can make a bit of money instead of tap dancing. And then all of a sudden, I've got great news, which I'm going to drop the bombshell for you now. I was saving it. They are writing a musical about me.
Oh, my God.
And brilliant. I just got money from the government, finally, to help the writers write the musical.
Oh,
wow,
brilliant,
so you've
Carlotta.
got a government-funded musical in your honour, Carlotta.
Well, they finally gave out some money to the arts.
Yep.
And then we had to we had to write in, they had to write in, and anyway, they chose my story because they must have loved it. Trevor Ashley, he's the main writer on it.
Yeah.
Right.
And
brilliant.
We're doing, they're going to turn me into a musical. I'll probably be on a walker by the time it gets on stage. But
now, it's interesting
brilliant
though,
work,
Carlotta.
That's brilliant.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? With all this, there's been a lot of discussion lately about who can play what, the whole blackface argument that's going on. But it's even been the case where they're saying unless you're transgender, you can't play a transgender person. But
well, that's right. I mean, I cop flack for getting Jessica Mariah to play
exactly.
me in my movie. But the only reason I did back then to do that, because there wasn't a drag queen that looked like me when I was younger.
But that's the point, isn't it? That's the point.
Courtney Act was she auditioned for it, but they didn't want her at the time. But I thought, I think when they do the musical, it's going to have to done by 3 people. It'll be done as a little boy, and then me as Carlotta, and then me as an older Carlotta. And I think perfectly, Courtney Act would be perfect for me to play when I'm doing my, Carlotta younger days.
I tell you what, you should be playing yourself as the older Carlotta. No one can do you better than you.
No, thanks, darling. You know why I gave up TV?
Why is that?
Not only because I lost you, Rob, it's because I started looking at myself back. It's not for old boilers, I tell you.
I think
and
I'm not
beautiful.
I'm not going in to get those bloody Maroubra lips, I'm telling you.
Carlotta,
you look beautiful, Carlotta.
You are a delight to look at. You are an absolute delight. But it was controversial, you getting Jessica Mariah, and you did cop backlash, but you just said today you couldn't do it.
Remember the writing into Channel 10 saying, oh, she should have used it, And I copped quite a bit of flack, but I've copped a lot of flack over different things over the years. I'm too strong a person. We're here for a short time, not a long time. And as I say to people, if they don't like it, tell them where to go.
Though you've been here a long time, Carlotta, just quietly.
But yeah, look, I want to ask you though, Carlotta.
Listen, Rob, you're going to catch up, honey.
Oh, look at the crow's feet there, Carlotta. He's already catching up very quickly.
I've got the bow coming tomorrow.
But Carlotta, I want to go back to Rob's point though. There is this big thing where if you're not part of the community, if you're not part of the ethnicity, if you're not part of the race, you can't play that character. We go back to Transamerica where Felicity Huffman played a transsexual, and she played it very well. But do you find that offensive, though? Do all roles need to be played by someone who belongs in that particular group?
Look, it depends on what the story is, and it depends on which way they're going. But, like everything, what's happened with the gay community is what's happened with the straights thing years ago, which I used to complain about, and I still don't believe in it. Political correctness has crept in.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
now in the gay scene, it's starting to be political correctness. Well, I'm sorry, you ain't going to change me.
That's why we love her. That's why we love her.
Change me. I don't care what you think. I'm 77 this year, and believe you me, I couldn't give a.
And you don't look a day over 82. You look amazing.
Your hairline's not looking good lately either.
That's true. That's true, actually.
Take that, Rob. Yes.
You know not to verbally take me on.
No, I know, but I like a little bit of sparring and then I'll move right back because you will beat me each and every time. Carlotta, thank you so much for coming on the show. You know we love you and adore you, and we could speak to you for another 3 hours, but we will wrap
I've
up
got to learn to work these gadgets.
Yes, absolutely. I will get you back on soon, though. I promise you that. I will drag you up here.
I'm glad, Robbo, I'm glad your hair's not so puffy anymore, too.
I pushed it down for you before I came on. So I made sure.
You're a good-looking boy. You don't need it puffed up like an old melon.
Is that better?
All right,
Hey,
Carlotta,
you're a
thank you for
good-looking
being
boy.
on the Ben, Rob and Robbo show. We appreciate it.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you,
God bless
Carlotta. Much love.
It's the red light shot of the day. Where are you going today? You never know where you'll end up with the red light shot of the day.
And today we're taking you to the Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary in Tennessee, USA. I wonder who on our team picked this one. Hello, Abby. All right, let's get some feedback. There's plenty coming through at the moment. And we've got Jamie saying, Carlotta and Joe Casamento today. It's a mini Beauty and the Beast reunion. Malcolm says, agree, Robbo. Mandatory testing would give us a clear idea of the spread and or improvement of COVID-19. Jeanette says, New South Wales Health changed their stance on masks. They state that if you can't distance 1.5 metres, then you should wear a mask. Nicole says, as long as they're the correct masks, not these homemade pretty ones that do nothing. Yes, I agree with that. Nicole says one rule for all of them, one source, not a national one, and then 8 different ones from states and territories. She's talking about have a way of having masks that, having rules that everyone abides by. Amanda says, I've been tested and had to wear a mask while I was waiting for the results. It does take a bit of getting used to, otherwise it isn't a big deal to wear. Shane says, you know the rules, Rob, the later the presser, the worse the news. We were talking about the fact Dan Andrews hasn't done a press conference today. We were told by his comms team that he isn't doing one. The Prime Minister has said during that live press conference we mentioned that he is doing one this afternoon, so there's a lot of mixed messages coming through. People loving Carlotta. Malcolm Blunt says, congratulations, Carlotta. Amanda says, Carlotta, loving Carlotta, telling it like it is. Jamie says, Carlotta, you can always call me if you're ever feeling lonely. You have lots of love from all Australia. And, of course, the best line to come out of that whole interview, Maroubra lips, love it. Thank you for all your feedback. It's time to talk movies with our dear friend Joe Casamento. Joe, it is so nice to see you again.
Hello, Joe.
She's got the Maroubra lips going.
Lips.
But most of all, look at this bloody view. This is from her balcony, Robbo.
Oh, my goodness. Very pretty. Look, I'm going to say, though...
This way.
Yep. Well, Joe, I'm going to say, you know, Joe is prettier than the view. The view's very pretty, but Joe is prettier than the view.
Joe, we are running out of time, so I'm going to power on. As theatres battle to stay afloat globally, Broadway may have found its next act, Joe.
It has. The film version of the musical Hamilton on Disney was released last week, and it has been a mega hit for Disney Plus. In fact, 1 million customers, can you believe, downloaded the app when the musical was released, and it's actually not available for the free trial. So it might be the new way for Broadway to sort of stay alive. We have had in the past several musicals like Cats. There was also a few other ones that, you know, Rent 12 years ago was filmed live on stage. But this one has really shown that, you know, it might be the way to bring musicals to a much wider audience. Let's be honest. A lot of musical lovers aren't, you know, your average TV watcher. So maybe it's a way to keep Broadway alive.
Love that. And Thandie Newton has opened up about casual racism in Hollywood.
She has. So Thandie, who I first came to love and adore in Flirting with Nicole Kidman, has actually opened up in this most amazing in-depth interview in Vulture magazine. Thandie spoke about how she's experienced sexism and racism within Hollywood. Particularly, she talked about Charlie's Angels and how she refused a role in that film because not only did the head of the film studio at the time say, if we cast you, we're going to have to change the character because the character is actually written as university educated, and that wouldn't be the case if, you know, we cast you. And she was appalled by that. But also the director at the time said he had the plans to open the film on her butt, basically, and pan out, and it would be a shot where the viewer thought it was a tarmac with a yellow stripe, but it was actually going to be her butt cheeks, like a tarmac with some tight material. So as you can imagine, she turned that down. She's also experienced it throughout the rest of her career. And you know, when she left the police drama series Rogue, which she was starring in prior to Westworld, they in fact killed her off in a scene where they basically strangled her, threw in her a dumpster, and it said Westworld garbage disposal written on the side. So, you know, it's a very in-depth interview. If you want to take a look, really go online.
Okay, I'm not sure about that one, Joe. Look, I know you've been to the movies. We will talk about that next week because we do have some news coming in about COVID with Ben on location. Joe, thank you very much. We love you and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, Ben, what have you got for us, mate, over in Chapel Street?
Yeah, well, things are looking pretty much the same as what they were before, which is the foot traffic seems to be not very much, but there's a lot of cars on the road. However, I just was going to say, I'm not sure if you've already said this, but the press conference is going to be happening in Victoria with Dan Andrews. So there will be a press conference later today with more information coming out for Victorians. So I think that's breaking news, considering this morning we were told that there was no press conference to be happening. Also, I have some more information from Scott Morrison about mandatory testing at schools. Kids, they are they're putting a bit more money into making sure that the kids are being tested. And if the kids are going over the average temperature that they should be, then they'll be sent home.
Thank you. And we also saw Scott Morrison in a press conference earlier speaking about Hong Kong, but he also spoke further about COVID-19. Let's have a quick look at some of that.
What we're calling for across Victoria, particularly in Melbourne, but along those border town areas as well, is continuing patience as issues settle in terms of the arrangements that are in place for movement of people necessarily across those borders. And I'd say more broadly across the country, that we must guard against complacency, that we must continue to follow those social distancing protocols all around Australia, even in states or territories where the number of cases is effectively zero. Please don't think that any of the states or territories are immune.
It's the Ben, Rob and Robbo, Ben, Rob and Robbo, Ben, Rob and Robbo Show.